Namielle is hiding something. I think it's been under our noses this entire time. This underappreciated Elder Dragon was released with the Iceborne DLC for Monster Hunter World, and in my opinion, it's the coolest Elder Dragon out of the bunch. But why don't we see or hear too much of Namielle throughout the story? Let me tell you why Namielle is actually incredible, and then see if we can uncover some clues to what Namielle might be giving us hints toward. Alright, first off, design. Let's look at this thing. Look at it, just look at it. It's a work of art. It's incredible. The coloring on it, it starts out, it's just so vibrant. All the blues, the little bits of red and orange in there. It's got the nice black cape in the back. And it even changes throughout the hunt. Did you know that? As it spews out water and moves water around the battlefield, it starts to dry up a little bit. It's like dried coral. It starts to get gray as the hunt goes on. What other monster does something like that? It's so cool. Also, I love all the little flashing nodes on the tendrils that it has. It's really appealing. It just stands out really well, but it's not overdone. It's got just the right amount of nodes to make your eye drawn to it. One of my favorite parts of the monster is its wings, its big black cape that it has. It feels like a regal monster, like it's got this big old billowing thing following behind it. It looks so sweet. And then also, have you heard this thing's roars? Just listen to this thing. It sounds like a windy sponge. It's such an interesting sound. It's so unique, and I like its like squeakiness almost, but it also has that nice, like obvious raspy roar of a beast. Now, we knew when we were going up against Namielle as well that it was going to be spewing water. That was obvious. But I don't think any of us were expecting the lightning that came out of Namielle. It's so unique that it does that, and it totally catches you off guard. You think you're just gonna be dodging like water lasers the whole fight, or these pools that are on the ground, and then it whips out the static. And it comes in and it's just, man, it just gets you. It looks really cool too. I'm kind of a sucker for lightning element in video games, so it was an easy win for me with Namielle, because I love all the lightning that came out of it, but I definitely didn't see it coming that it was gonna shoot lightning at me. I'm also really partial to monsters that you can cut the tails off of, and Namielle has a tail that's severable, so that's always good. It's just one of the best feelings in the games to get the tail cut off a monster. And they had the choice, the devs had a choice to make Namielle's tail severable or not, and they made it that way, so it's pretty cool. And then we can't forget one of the best parts. Its long, stocky, dragon-like neck. It fits the dragon theme so good. You know, I'm partial to dragons as well, so my bias is showing there, but man, it just looks so good. It's such a good design monster. And I won't even get into the little details here, right? Because like it looks like it has coral for stumps, and it's got this like jellyfish feel almost as well. It's such an interesting monster. Now, what about the hunt though? Because besides its looks, which are incredible, the hunt with it I think is even more awesome. When you stumble upon Namielle the first time, you see the cutscene and it starts to have like a rising tide feel. The water's pooling around you, and that gives you the expectation of what you might deal with Namielle. And Namielle doesn't disappoint in that regard. Namielle controls water. It's able to move water around and spew water all over the place. And yes, there's the water lasers. Those were kind of expected. But the little pools on the ground it leaves, where it actually moves you around and causes you to stumble and stuff like that, I think that's so cool. Other monsters do the same thing. I'm thinking primarily of Kashala Daora. But Kashala Daora is annoying. It's too often that it uses its wind pressure to move you around. Where Namielle has just the right amount, I think. There's water all over the place. It can inhibit your movement, and then it occasionally will actually physically move your hunter around. Also, this move right here is the coolest move, and it's even better when you get the opportunity to dodge through it. I think it's really sweet. But the water is only the first phase, or the first step of Namielle, because we know that it does lightning as well, and the lightning plays such a big part in this hunt. When you start fighting Namielle, it starts dropping this water all over the place, and it's sort of like it's laying down a minefield and getting things started. And then you activate its trap card, and it electrocutes you back to camp. It has all this water everywhere, and it charges it, and you take a ton of damage from the electricity in the water. It's crazy. And let's not forget the really, really awesome part of Namielle. Its ultimate. Holy crap. This attack is so sick. It carded me instantly when I got hit by it. It's such a big hit, and it looks amazing. Also, a quick side note on Namielle. The female armor specifically is now my favorite looking armor in the game currently. Except for the helm. We don't talk about the helm. So with all these things about Namielle and this well-designed Elder Dragon, I think that there's a little bit of a secret that Namielle is hiding from us that maybe we just didn't catch, that we didn't know going into the game. There's a lot of monsters in Monster Hunter World that were added for the first time. Like, they made their first appearance in Monster Hunter World. Tobi Kadachi, Puki Puke, Legiana, Anjanath, Dagaran, and there's a bunch more too. They made their debut in this game. It's their first time here. And essentially all of these monsters, as you run into them throughout the game, they got more screen time than Namielle did. Why? That's so interesting. Like, why do we know more about Tobi Kadachi and how it hunts? Or Anjanath, who shows up all over the place in its mannerisms, than we do about Namielle? We get one cutscene with Namielle, and I'll get into the cutscene a little bit here, but remember, we're talking about an Elder Dragon here, not just a regular monster. There's huge implications in the lore of Monster Hunter for Elder Dragons. And this is the first game where Namielle shows up. And you'd think that there'd be a lot of, you know, story behind why there's a new Elder Dragon and what it does and what disasters it may cause or something else with that. But there's just nothing. There's one cutscene and then we hear nothing else about Namielle. Interesting, I think. Very interesting to ponder why that might be. So, let's put on our tinfoil hats, because it's time for Conspiracies with Tails! We're getting into some interesting theories here, because Namielle, who was released in the Iceborne DLC, maybe they released Namielle in Iceborne because they didn't want to compete with Nergigante. And there's other Elder Dragons in the base game too, right? So now you've got a whole bunch of Elder Dragons that maybe you're trying to protect in the base game so you wouldn't release Namielle. But that's interesting. And we even look at it from Iceborne. We've got Velkhana, who's a brand new Elder Dragon in Iceborne. And so maybe Namielle is in the game but isn't trying to compete with Velkhana as well. I think that's just a strange thought. You'd think that an Elder Dragon would have a lot of lore behind it, but, you know, maybe there's a passable reason why Namielle wasn't put into the base game because of the additions of other Elder Dragons. But Velkhana is a big Elder Dragon in Iceborne, and Namielle is as well. It's an Elder Dragon. So you'd expect to see more about it, and there's just not much. Very interesting to me. Also, Namielle is a fully fleshed out Elder Dragon, as in it has a full and unique moveset, a unique hunt, right? When you're fighting the thing, it's not like it's a bunch of repurposed attacks from other monsters mashed in. It's got its own thing going on. And another thing with that too is you're fighting Namielle above water, despite its use, control, and need for water throughout the hunt. I think that's curious. Is the Namielle we're fighting now potentially a weaker version of Namielle? Imagine if this Elder Dragon, you fought it in or under the water. How would that hunt actually play out? Why do we hunt this Elder Dragon above the water or on the ground? It's just interesting to me for something that's so water-based. Check out this cutscene, right? The cutscene that you run into Namielle and see the first time. Do you see anything strange as you watch it? Why was the background all blacked out in this cutscene? I mean, sure, it's called the Abyss Dragon, but you don't meet it in the Abyss. You're just in the Coral Highlands. It's never dark there. Why is it all blacked out? And at the end of this cutscene, when it's all over with, it just cuts to black and there's some text on screen. Why? In almost every other cutscene, I think in every other cutscene, when you see a monster for the first time, like the cinematics that you see, it ends with you standing right in front of it and you're gonna go hunt that monster. Why do we have this cutscene with Namielle and it cuts to black and there's text and then you're not in front of Namielle? That's really strange to me. Just very curious. Also, another conspiracy here. Namielle's not in Rise or Sunbreak. And by comparison, Velkhana was a new Elder Dragon that released in Iceborne and it made it into Sunbreak. Velkhana and Namielle are both fleshed out elder dragons. They're really unique and have different things they do. They appear in the same DLC, but we don't hear much about Namielle and Iceborne, and it doesn't make an appearance in the next game that releases. I wonder why. And this makes me think that maybe Namielle was developed later than Velkhana through the Iceborne, developing phase. And that makes sense, right? Because Velkhana is the box art. Velkhana is the flagship monster. It's the thing that the whole story is built around for Iceborne. So Namielle likely was developed later, but I wonder why it was developed later, besides just Velkhana being the face of the game. And also, why is Namielle in Iceborne in the first place? Is it just a filler elder dragon? Is it only there just to add more water weapons and water armor? I don't think so. I think all of these reasons, all of these tinfoil hat thoughts, is because I think Namielle is going to be a big part of Monster Hunter 6. I'm calling it here first. Namielle was in Iceborne DLC and had all this stuff going on, and yet wasn't a big part of the storyline. It wasn't a big lore implicated monster for the series. And I think it's because it's actually supposed to be in Monster Hunter 6 and it got added to Iceborne later. Here's why I think so. The other Elder Dragons have past game lore, or their lore is expanded on in-world in Iceborne. So think about your Valhazak, your Teostra, your Kushala Daora. They're in past games. They have a lot of stuff going on with them for what they do. Then you get into world and you've got things like Nergigante and even Xeno'jiiva. You get to see a bunch of lore with that going into Safi'jiiva later on. There's all this lore and implications for those Elder Dragons existing that you see in Monster Hunter World, and yet Namielle is left out. Namielle didn't get the spotlight in World or Iceborne, but I think its time in the spotlight is coming. I think it's going to happen in the next game. Also, Namielle being developed later than Velkhana for Iceborne, it makes me wonder if Namielle was sort of like being tested for how Namielle would work, how the hunt would work in Iceborne before it gets honed in for its hunt in the next game. Remember, Namielle is its own abyss dragon. It's a water dragon, and we fight it above water. We fight it on the ground. So, I think that there's more implications for what a hunt with this underwater would look like, or in water would look like. Also, Namielle was only in Iceborne. Why wasn't it added to the base game where there's other Elder Dragons as well? It makes me think that Namielle was a late addition to the roster for Iceborne, which also hints at its potential that it was supposed to be first introduced in Monster Hunter 6. It could be the thing that they needed to add to Iceborne to give it that extra oomph in the Iceborne DLC, but it's being developed later, and it has no role in the base game for Monster Hunter World, and it has basically no role in the story or in the game of Iceborne. It's just there out of nowhere. It makes me feel like it's hinting at it was supposed to be in Monster Hunter 6, but we moved it back one game. And even more so, is Namielle a hint at underwater combat for the next game? Like I've been saying, we fight this Elder Dragon out of the water, but it's a monster meant for water. It does a lot with water. And imagine this dragon, this Elder Dragon, shooting lightning throughout the water. Like, you get a good taste of it above the water, on the ground, because of the pools it leaves behind and then electrocutes it. But dang, this thing's got to be better and more suited for underwater or on water with the abilities that it has. It's kind of crazy. So why does this Elder Dragon that's meant for the abyss fight you outside the water? That's just, to me, it feels like it's a hint towards water combat or underwater combat in the next game. So yeah, it's my hope that in the next game, Namielle gets another showing, or at least in future games at least. Namielle is a really awesome Elder Dragon. I've been asked many, many times what my favorite Elder Dragon is, and Namielle has been my answer every time. So obviously, I'd love to see more of it in other games. Namielle's a well-designed monster. Its hunt is very unique, and I really think that there's more on the way for this clearly underwater-focused Elder Dragon. So what do you think? Is my tinfoil hat on too tight? Or am I onto something here, and maybe you can fill me in on some more potential secrets that Namielle is hiding? Let me know in the comments. I read and reply to as many comments as possible, so I'll get back to you on your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one.